that was 100% the most stressful experience I had in year 12. It actually became a driving factor to become a medical student, just because of the role models. I want to be like them.
Jared, welcome to the podcast. It's really great to have you here, and I'm so excited to be unpacking all of the different aspects of your story and what it means to get into medicine for you. And I'm really excited, especially because you are actually the first guest we've had on the podcast who is only recently just come into medicine, being a first year, and having only graduated about 6 months ago. So you've got a lot of really good insights, I'm sure, for current students who are thinking about medicine too. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about you and what it is you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, so as you said before, I just recently graduated school in 2024, and I'm currently a first-year medical student at Monash University, and I'm also working as a live block invigilator here at Continuity Education.
Okay, awesome. Well, congratulations on getting into medicine. And yeah, tell me a bit about the UCAT live invigilation as well.
Yeah, it was actually quite a key part of my journey doing the UCAT, and once I graduated, I was actually offered a job here and to
Yeah.
apply for a few jobs here, and I found that the live mock was probably my favorite because it's in-person interaction. I get to talk to the students, get to see how they go, and it's pretty fun seeing how they evolve from first starting at the UCAT to eventually getting better and better and up to the day as well. So it's been pretty fulfilling and it's really fun as well.
Awesome. And do you see kind of yourself as a student in the students that you're working with too?
100%. They always come up with like relatable stories, perhaps about how UCAT preparation tailed off in term one, and now they get back into it, and I tell them, oh, that's the exact same with me.
Same as me. And managing the nerves as well. And I guess it's really nice that you can be in that position of counseling them and being like, oh, it's okay. Like it's okay to be stressed because I was stressed as well. No, that's really great, and I'm glad you're enjoying that. It's a good team to be a part of. So with medicine so far, I mean, first year you're only about what, 8 weeks in, 9 weeks in?
It's 8 weeks.
Yeah, 8 weeks in. So how's that 8 weeks been? Did it live up to your expectations?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And first of all, I'm extremely grateful to be in medicine, doing medicine. And yeah, the content's been pretty fun so far. It's what do you expect? A lot of biology, only biology basically. And clinical skills is amazing as well.
Okay.
I think that's one of the most fulfilling parts so far that I've done, and I've had a lot of fun with it.
So yeah, why clinical skills? Why was that the one that is sort of stood out to you so far?
I think clinical skills is what makes me feel the closest to being a doctor right now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's like a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong dream. And being able to do clinical skills so far, it's been so amazing to actually inject a sponge and take someone's blood pressure, and it's really fun. And I know in the far future it will be something on a daily basis, but getting to experience and learn it now is really fulfilling.
And clinical skills just gets better and better, and you get to do different exams and histories, and you sort of, I mean, the word that Monash will use is like clinical reasoning. They'll sort of you'll start to feel that evolve and improve as you go along as well. So I guess what I'm interested to hear in terms of like debunking myths a little bit, and for students who haven't actually maybe even considered medicine as well, maybe there's a lot of perceptions like, oh, it's, impossible to get into, or, you got to study all the time 24/7. What's something that you maybe expected or you think was a bit of a myth when you were trying to get into medicine that you've realized actually isn't so true?
I mean, up until 9 weeks ago, I always thought medicine was going to be extremely intense, competitive, and impossible to do, with the content being extremely hard and difficult to understand. And now I realize it's actually pretty chill, and everyone there's really nice. They're all laid back, and they're all super friendly, and it's a really good environment where everyone's trying to bring each other up. We're all trying to be the best doctors that we can be, and it's a super positive environment. And I'm sure the content will get harder, but yeah, right now it's been a lot of fun and it's pretty relaxing.
Awesome. I think particularly when I came into medicine as well, I'm not sure I thought that it would be competitive as such, but certainly I think when everyone had kind of gone into medicine past that big period of like, done the MMI, done the UCAT, gone through all the stressful bits, it's like, okay, we can relax now. And like you said, lift each other up. And I think that's really good that we're seeing that across all of the cohorts, not just in my experience too. So that's very, very exciting. And I think it's going to help a lot with going forward and helping you to have friends. And when you get into a hospital environment too, you can have those friends to rely on as well. Awesome. All right, so let's take a step back and looking at your year 12 and so your final year of school. You did year 12 here in Melbourne. Whereabouts did you go to school?
Yeah, so I went to Haileybury College in Keysborough.
Okay.
So that's where I went to school, and it was, yeah, super positive experience. I have barely anything negative to say about it, and I had a lot of fun, and it was fulfilling. I feel accomplished, and yeah, I'd say it's one of the best times I had in my life.
Awesome. And did you carry any friends from Haileybury actually coming into medicine with you as well?
Yeah, so I have quite a few friends from Haileybury who actually got into this medicine with me.
Sweet.
And it's, yeah, it's super fun to catch up with them, and I still talk to them on a daily basis. So it's really fun.
Okay. One of the things people sort of talk about when coming into a university environment is sometimes there can be a little bit of a challenge with going to university with friends that you've had in school because, you're friends with them and you might sort of struggle to sort of walk away from that friendship a little bit. Do you feel like that's been your experience?
Yeah, I definitely do feel we're not as close as we used to be. I mean, obviously, seeing them 5 days a week was
Yes.
super beneficial.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still make the effort to see each other every weekend. Perhaps watching sport. Usually, we're watching sport together, and we're
Yeah.
going out for dinners, and it's super fun, and it's super nice to catch up to them because a lot of them have different career pathways. Some of them doing finance, some of them doing engineering, and some of them doing science, trying to get into medicine. And it's really nice to just reconvene and just catch up with each other.
Mm, beautiful. So with your year 12 experience and all of that goes into that as well, very busy year. Uh, besides just your general school experience as well, what was your experience of year 12 and that final year of school?
I mean, outside of academics, I think it was overall, again, a super positive experience. I mean, everyone there is trying to do the best they can, and it can get a bit competitive. You can feel the tension in the air, but again, we're all super nice to each other, and especially during the SACs, we're all studying in the library, we're helping each other out actually, and I think more towards the exams, we're super close as a cohort as we're trying to lift the school up, we're trying to lift each other up, and I think it's really positive no matter what course you're trying to get into, just helping each other be the best we can be.
Mm. It's interesting you mentioned that actually because in about I think I learnt it way too late, but in year 12, when I found out that actually if everyone does better, it lifts everyone's scores. I was like, oh, that's really, really good. So we should, continue to help each other out. And certainly I felt that there was that essence of actually helping each other and sharing notes and helping others to improve studying together. So that's great that you had that. And with those friends that you mentioned who did come into medicine, what role did they play in studying and also going through, the UCAT and the med entry? Did they play a part in that for you?
I think they did play a major role, especially during the UCAT. I was personally a bit isolated during the UCAT, just spamming questions every day, doing exams, reviewing them. It's a repetitive process, and it's important to stay consistent with it. But at times when I did feel worried, it was nice to have someone who was going through the same experience as me. I would shoot them a message, and they would shoot me a message. Talking about the mock we just did. Perhaps we did really, really poorly in QR, and we talked to each other about it. And it's fun just knowing that someone's relating with the same experience that you're having right now.
Mm. And from that as well, did that also was that also true for year 12? Did you have some friends that you were consistently working with throughout the SACs and the exams too?
Yeah, so a few of my best mates are actually doing the exact same subjects at me,
Awesome.
and I was fortunate enough to have them in most of my classes as well. And I think this really made my year 12 a better experience as well. I was more motivated to work. A bit of friendly competition is always a bit nice,
Always good.
but also, talking in class, having fun, having some laughs is so valuable. And I think this contributed to why I think my year 12 subjects were quite successful and why I was so happy with the result at the end.
Mm. Okay. And globally, looking at those subjects and I suppose globally looking at year 12 as well, I'm interested, similar to what we discussed before about medicine, was there something about year 12 that as maybe a year 11 or year 10 student, you had a perception of, or there was some sort of myth about year 12 that being in there, being a student who's working through those SACs and trying to stay consistent, as you said, was there a certain myth that you, I guess, debunked through that year?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was in year 10 and 11, I thought managing all the subjects in year 12 was going to be near impossible.
Hmm.
And I was fortunate enough to do 2, 3, 4 subjects in
Excellent.
year
Yeah.
11. And I also struggled managing 2, 3, 4s. And so I was thinking to myself, how am I going to manage 4 subjects in year 12? And I thought this was going to be extremely difficult. But going into year 12, I guess it was a big mindset switch. And I found it quite manageable, actually. And of course, I was fortunate enough to do only 4 subjects, which also helped.
So which were the two subjects you did in year 11?
I did a Northern Hemisphere subject, so that was
Okay.
further maths at the time,
Yep.
and I also did biology.
Okay. And beyond just, well, okay, I've done the subject, now I can take on a few more. What do you think changed between year 11 to year 12 in terms of actually being able to manage those subjects?
I was definitely a bit fearful of doing a 3-4 in years 10 and 11. So the Northern Hemisphere actually started in the second half of year 10.
Okay.
And to me, it was such a big deal. It's my first ever 3-4, this is my first ever SAC. And it's going to matter so much to my ATAR. And having this thought process actually detriments me a bit, I reckon, because I put so much pressure on myself. And I still did, and I still do it at times nowadays. But knowing that I can do it and having done a 3-4 myself, knowing it's manageable, knowing it's doable really helps ease my soul going into year 12.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's interesting you mentioned the sort of spamming questions for the UCAT. We can come to talk about the UCAT soon, but I think I'm interested to hear your thoughts on in the 3-4. Did you sort of take the quantity over quality sort of approach to your 3-4?
100% I did. Especially for biology, I thought to myself, the more exams I do, the better result I'm going to get. And with my Northern Hemisphere subject finishing in May, I had the whole second half of the year just to biology, basically. I neglected a lot of my 1-2s, and I've put a lot of my time solely based on biology. And with doing all these exams, it helped a bit, but I think the key aspect I was missing was the reviewing process. And I skipped that. I just kept doing more exams, more questions, and I noticed I'd make the same mistakes. And by the time my exam came, I did it. I felt all right with it. I actually felt pretty good. But I think in hindsight, looking back at it, the reviewing process was something I omitted that shouldn't have been.
Mm. So were you actually happy with that biology result in the end?
Yeah, I remember waking up early in the morning and looking at my result, and I was happy with it, but it wasn't spectacular or anything. And I realized I was hoping actually this would be a bottom 2 subject
Okay.
in year 12, and I think this brings me into a point where I shouldn't have locked in subjects to be my top 4 or my bottom 2. And I think this was a trap that a lot of people fall into. Even talking to students nowadays doing the UCAT, they tell me, "Oh, this is going to be the top 4 subjects, and this is going to be bottom 2." And it's a trap I fell into up until the day before my exams. And I was still contemplating whether I should study more for a few subjects. But I think, yeah, being open-minded is a big aspect that helped my success.
Good. Okay. I was actually watching one of the pieces of short form content from the tutors from Contour Education, and they were talking about putting all your eggs in the baskets, that the top 4. And I guess what's your take on the point in the year at which you might actually make that decision and go, okay, this is going to be one of my bottom 2? Do you think there's ever a point where it's maybe too far gone? I don't want to say it like that, but sort of get what I mean.
Yeah, I don't think there was a point where I fully committed to sacrificing a subject per se. I mean, like I said before, I was hoping biology would be in the bottom 2, but there wasn't much I could do about that.
Yeah.
So I was focusing on the 4 subjects, and the subjects I did were actually English, methods, psychology, and chemistry. And with psychology being the lowest scaling subject, I always thought of it to be my bottom 2 subject, and I neglected it at times. And if it wasn't for my teacher who always encouraged me to do more psychology, to do more exams, she was emailing me before the exam as well, reminding me, "Oh, you should do more exams."
Yep.
And yeah, if it wasn't for her, I think psychology wouldn't have been like my best subject. It was my favorite subject as well.
Okay. So best and favorite.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think it's a coincidence. And again, like I said before, the class was amazing. I had 2 of my best mates in the class. The teacher was super supportive.
Sounds like you got a
Yeah,
great teacher.
and yeah, I actually spent the least time on psychology, and the result actually surprised me a lot on ATAR day. And it made me realize to never lock anything in and to always be open-minded, because I was so adamant on chemistry being in my top 4, and it ended up being bottom 2, but it still worked out all right because psychology saved me.
I really enjoyed I did psychology as well in year 11, and really enjoyed it. And I was glad to see, well, have been glad to see as well, that, taking it into university, there's actually some things that we learned in psychology that are of course going to flow over into medicine too. So that's great. So with your other subject as well in year 11, your further maths, were you happy with that result in the end?
Yeah, I think my experience with Northern Hemisphere further maths was overall extremely positive. Obviously, the result was something I'd been looking for, and it was a really good result I was happy with. But what I took more from it was the learning experience. So again, it was my first SAC, my first experience with 3-4. I thought it was the biggest thing in the world. And being in year 10 doing a 3-4 in the second half, it wasn't too common. And I was super fortunate to have a few close mates in the class with me as well. And going through that experience together was super valuable. and we learned how to study. And with further maths being more of a common subject, it was easier to learn as well.
Okay.
And yeah, with it being a Northern Hemisphere subject, it ended in the middle of the year. And this gave me an opportunity to test out a few subjects to do in year 11 as well, as I was quite stuck between health and human development and psychology. And since it ended in the middle of the year, I was able to pick up psychology unit 2 to test out how it was like at the second half of the year 11.
Okay. And you clearly stuck with it and ended up enjoying it as well. Good. So with that very nice lens of retrospect and looking at the subjects that you chose, including the year 12 ones as well, would you have changed anything with that decision?
Overall, it worked out for me, and I wouldn't change anything about it. And I had a super positive experience. Where I'm at, I'd like to be now. And yes, I wouldn't change anything about it. I think what I would have done was appreciate school a bit more.
Okay.
You know, I thought it was a bit of a hard slog at times, waking up at 7:30 every morning.
It gets worse.
Yeah, no. Oh wow. But yeah, waking up at 7:30 every morning, going to 8 hours of school every day. But in hindsight, what I should have done is really appreciate and be more grateful for the opportunities I had. Such amazing classes. Every single class I had super good mates with. And yeah, just slowing down a bit, taking a look around and just enjoying the life you have is something I'd change.
Mm. Oh, that's really, really good advice. And so often I feel like students and myself included get stuck into the academic sort of slog of it all. And of course you would have a couple of other things going on with medicine entry and being able to take the step back, or even just, going to, if you've got a formal at school, really enjoying that night and enjoying the time with your friends, going and seeing movies, all that kind of thing is really important. So I'm very interested to hear from you as someone who got an exceptional ATAR. 99.6 is an unbelievably high score, and congratulations for that as well. I think there's a lot of advice that you could give in regards to your study strategies and things, and I'm really interested in unpacking how that differed between your subjects, because you've got a really nice spread. You've got some maths, English as well, and these sort of sciencey subjects with psychology and chemistry as well. So globally, what was your approach to your studies? And then building on that as well, how did it differ between those subjects?
So one of the biggest aspects of building my study habits was routine. So every day I'd go to school and I'd have a set routine, and I wouldn't change it much unless there were some strange circumstances. Maybe I was extremely tired, maybe I had sport the day. So yeah, but most of the time, 99% of the time, I stuck to the same routine. And for me, this looks like a 7:30 wake up and 3:45 end school. And on the way home, I'd actually like to take a break, take a bit of a nap, just relax and unwind during that nap.
Okay. And you did nap in the car on the way home?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'd wake up in the garage, it'd be all dark,
Awesome.
and I'd make my way back into home. And yeah, from there, that's where the study routine happened. I like to section off my time. I'd have my SAT calendars up as well, so I'd know what would be coming up, what I should do, and how to make the most of my time. And I think this leads into another big aspect, is to make the most of your time. In year 12, I had the mindset of, this is the last time you ever study this hard, so please just make the most of your time.
Yep.
So sometimes after school, I'd be too exhausted, even after the nap. And so I made the decision to just go to sleep earlier and to wake up earlier the next day. So I'd still be getting a full 8 hours sleep and still a bit of time to study before school started. So overall, I think the biggest study tips would be have a routine, stay consistent with it, and to make the most of your time.
So of those three sort of tips that you've mentioned there, the routine, the consistency, and then of course the time management and maximizing that time, with regards to how you actually make the most of that time, what did that mean for you in regards to study skills? Were you someone who, I don't know, made flashcards or had a particular mind map approach? What was your approach to studying in that way?
Yeah, so making the most of my time, it's a fine balance between quantity and quality. Sometimes I find that when I was doing too much quantity, so too much time, 3 hours, I'd start to lose focus and it wouldn't be effective at all. And I'd rather spend that time just relaxing, just taking time off academics, just spending time with my family. And so what I used was a little app called Forest. And
Love forests.
yeah, you have it too?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a nice little way of quantifying the amount of study you do, but it also locks your phone.
Yes.
So you can't scroll on Instagram, you can't play any games, and yeah, you can't communicate with anyone during that time. So make sure you were fully focused in that time. And the good thing is you could stop at any time. So if you're feeling you were losing focus, you could just stop it, take a break, and reconvene your thoughts. And I think that was a key aspect that drove me to do so well in year 12. And another key aspect was just seeing my little forest and seeing like a pie chart of all my subjects. So that's how I know how I spent the least time on psychology, the most on methods. So it's fun seeing the pie chart as well. And I felt a bit of accomplishment, seeing the hours I studied for and knowing that it was put to good use.
That's got to be my favorite thing about Forest as well, is seeing that pie chart. And for those who don't know what the app actually is, you sort of plant trees and you can choose a specific tag for whatever you're doing. And like you said, there is the option to, is it called deep focus?
Yeah.
I think. And if you go off your phone, go off the app and, open Instagram or something, then your tree will actually die. So of course there's a sort of a motivation aspect there, but as you said, it's really, really good for seeing how you spend your time. And like you with methods, I've spent the most time on Special Maths in the end. And I also made an effort to try and schedule in some other things as well. So like adding the forest, the trees for sport and things, so you can actually see the contribution that makes to your year too. So adding friends on the app's good too, because you can be a little bit competitive with who's got more hours and
Yeah.
so with the study skills and your individual approach to those subjects and how they're different. So, maths being a very skills-based subject, psychology being quite content-based. How did your study approach differ there?
Again, I'll stick to the advice of do what works for you.
Mhm.
So for me, methods was an extremely difficult subject and I found it extremely hard to understand it at times. And so the best way that I found worked for me was just to do more questions and to ask questions. I asked my tutor how to do it, I asked my teacher as well. And for me, that was the biggest form of studying for methods, just a lot of practice questions. And I guess that's why it took so much time. And for psychology, as you said, it's really content heavy, but I find it to be really relatable to real life. For instance, sleeping, learning, and memory. I find it super interesting in that way. And so it wasn't too hard to study it. And what I did was on the way to school in the car, I'd just look at my flashcards and I just go through them every day. And I guess this consistency again just built up my knowledge. And I really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, just utilizing what works for you for each different subject and recognizing that one approach to studying for one subject won't necessarily work for another one.
Mm. Building off that as well, the role that your teacher will have in a subject, I think, is different for each person. And there are a few people at school with me that would just be completely self-led and swear by the textbook only and wouldn't, necessarily listen too much to the teaching in class. But in your overall approach to study as well, where did your teachers, plural, fit into that and contribute to that learning as well?
I think for me, my English and psychology teachers were such a role model to me, and they provided me with so much guidance. And even though I spent the least amount of time on psychology and English, they were the highest scoring for me.
Okay.
And I don't think this is a coincidence. I think the guidance that they gave me was so beneficial. And at the end of the day, they are doing their jobs, and they also want the best for you. So what that looked like for me was seeing my English teacher during my spares every single Thursday after lunch when most people would go home. I made the effort to go see him. And it's important to listen to the feedback as well. It's easy, and I think we all fall into the trap of taking feedback personally, but it's really important to just remain pragmatic and just realize that he's doing the best for you, or he or she is doing the best for you, and that it's really important to take on board this feedback to improve yourself.
Mm. I really like sitting with don't be too bothered by the feedback, because it is constructive. And particularly with English, I'll use this specific example there. Being comfortable with the first draft or the second draft, the third draft that you give to your teacher not being very good. Specifically, I remember the argument analysis SAC. The first few that I submitted were returning not great results, but being proactive, getting advice from the teacher, and also getting advice from your friends as well, reading other essays that they might have written and sort of picking up little pieces of advice from them too, is going to eventually lead you to, when it actually matters, in the SAC, get a result that you need, because you've gone through that criticism, you haven't taken it personally, you've used it constructively. So I really do appreciate you bringing up that point, because I think not taking criticism personally is so important, not only as a Year 12 skill, but as a life skill as well. Concluding that conversation about study habits and your approach to each of them, naturally walking into Year 12, you're going to have some goals around what sort of score you wanted and trying to be competitive in that regard. But in terms of actually goal setting and sort of the moment that clicked for you, I want to do medicine, or I want to end up here with this particular score, what was that moment for you? When was that moment?
I believe the moment was around the end of year 10 and the start of year 11. So in my family, my father's a doctor. And so growing up, he was always a role model to me, and he still is. And I just wanted to be like him. I still want to be like him, being a doctor. And as I grew up, I saw being a doctor was so fulfilling, putting those smiles on people's faces providing relief. It's terrible being sick or having any condition, and so just being able to be that sense of comfort for other people in the community was so like, inspiring for me. And so I realized the scores were hard, and I realized I can do it though. I knew it was possible for me, and so I thought it would be a really appropriate goal for me to do my best and to try and bring the most back to my community.
And did that contribute to your subject selection as well?
To be honest, my subject selection was a bit spontaneous, and aside from biology, the rest of the subjects weren't too inspired by medicine as a whole. But the subject selection process was quite, as I said, spontaneous, and it was trial and error, honestly. There were a few subjects I did that I didn't like. So, for instance, I did PE for a week, and I decided, yeah, I decided it wasn't for me. So I just quickly switched to NHT further, and that worked out a lot better for me. But yeah, I think biology helps a lot, and I think the science, like chemistry, biology, and some people argue psychology, I think it's really useful, and it does apply a lot to medicine as well.
Okay. What advice would you give to a student who is thinking about subject selection, and as a subset of that as well, maybe they're not sure what they want to end up in, maybe they are sure what they want to end up in. What sort of advice would you give regarding choosing your subjects?
For those in the early years, perhaps year 9 or 10, I think just generally try it yourself. I think taking that semester to try a subject, as you can always change out to a different subject from most schools. I think just trying it yourself to see how you like it. And like I hear a lot of advice from a lot of people saying, "Oh, don't do psychology, it's not that good," or psychology was really hard for them, or psychology was really easy, it wasn't worth it though. So I think me putting myself in that situation and trying it myself was one of the biggest key aspects that allowed me to succeed in year 12. And for those who aren't too sure of what's course they'd like to get in or what they like to do in general, I think finding a subject that you genuinely enjoy doing is the best thing you can do for yourself in terms of year 12 and maybe even uni or whatever they're pursuing. Because I think getting that satisfaction in year 12, the schooling experience is so it's really large. It's from prep to year 12, and just ending it off on a high note is so important to people. And I think that by doing subjects you enjoy, you might do better at as well. So for me, that was psychology, and it was my best subject as well. And I enjoyed it the most. And I think that this could carry on for a lot of different subjects and a lot of different people.
You said something really excellent there about trying it yourself and not taking people's word as necessarily gospel in terms of how the subject is going to go. And I think that's excellent advice because, like I said, someone might find psychology really difficult, but it might be your favorite subject. You might find it really, really easy. And I think not only in a year 12 sense, but even with extracurriculars as well and picking uni courses, some people will say, oh, law's really challenging, but it might fit really well for someone or be a really bad fit for someone else. And even with those year 12 subjects being so diverse, I think it's really great that you had that opportunity to try them and sort of take stock and go, no, PE is not for me, I'm going to switch over. So that's a great encouragement. Jared, I really like that you've mentioned there about sort of trying the subject before you really get invested in it. And I think taking people's advice at face value of this subject's really difficult or this one's really easy can be dangerous because maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't work for you. And I think that's true for uni subjects and uni courses as well. Maybe someone's really compatible with a law or a med degree or an arts degree, architecture, something, but it might not be what's right for someone else as well. So I really encourage anyone who's thinking about doing subjects, like you said, to actually try it out and see if it works for you before going on to it. All right, so wrapping up our conversation about year 12 and about your ATAR as well, as mentioned before, you've got an exceptional ATAR. So if you were to give one piece of advice to students about maximizing their year 12 and maximizing their ATAR, what would that be?
So year 12 is such a long and hard journey. I think it'd be nearly impossible to do it without a support team. So this could comprise of your teachers, your family, your friends, and going through year 12 with all of these, I found it so helpful, and I don't think I could have done it without them, honestly. So obviously with the teachers, they'd provide academic support, they'd provide advice as to what to do before a SAC, what to do for the exam, give me feedback. And my family would help me stop doubting myself. Obviously, everyone doubts themselves sometimes. There's a lot of pressure, especially in year 12. And I think my family was just there to be like an anchor and a rock, just to wake me up sometimes and to say everything's going to be okay. And with friends, it's a bit of everything actually. You can help each other academically, you can support each other, and it's a lot of fun with your friends as well. So I think definitely the biggest piece of advice would be to have a group of people around you to support you.
Great advice. Really, really great advice. I spoke at length with Samarath actually in one of the previous episodes about this imposter syndrome. And I like that you brought up the importance of having people to encourage you and pick you up when you're not feeling as encouraged. Did you feel like, whether it's imposter syndrome or just feeling discouraged every now and then, was true for you?
Yeah, definitely. Before every single SAC, before exams, before the UCAT, before the interview, I was so nervous, and I think partly I was putting so much pressure on myself to perform. It's
Mm.
do or die. And I think having someone to just wake me up and say, everything's gonna be okay, the sun will rise tomorrow, everything's gonna be okay. It was just good to wake me up and just calm myself down a bit.
So with regards to that support system as well, and I love that you spoke to the importance of having some encouragement there. Was there anything else that helped you deal with that imposter syndrome or the discouragement throughout the year as well?
I think that understanding that everything in life that's valuable is going to be hard to get, and seeing in the long term, looking into the future and seeing where you'd like to be is what pushed me through it, is what really motivated me a lot. So whether that be seeing myself as a doctor in 10 years or seeing myself with a family in like 15 years, seeing that, and that really pushed me to do the best that I could for them and for myself in the future, knowing that the future me would be thankful for all the hard work I put in. And again, knowing that everything will be okay and that the sun will rise, there's other opportunities and that everything will eventually work itself out.
Jared, you said something so well there about seeing the long term. And I think so often when you're feeling discouraged and you get home and you're tired, you don't feel like studying or you don't feel like doing X, Y, Z, being able to go, yeah, I'm putting all my effort in because it's year 12 and I've only got one shot at this, or trying to see the long term of, yeah, I'll thank myself later, is a really nice thing that I often say to myself as well. So that's excellent advice, and certainly something that I can be integrating more into the way I approach medicine and the way I study too, because reminding yourself of why you're studying, whether it's in a year 12 context or a uni context, is super duper important. So wrapping all that, you've got this great support system that's helping you academically and also just encouraging you when you're feeling down. What would you say was the most stressful period in that year of year 12?
Oh, for sure, it was the UCAT, just that period between term 2 and 3 where sacks were piling up and you've got this UCAT sitting there blocking your way into medicine. That was 100% the most stressful experience I had in year 12.
I like that you said blocking the way into medicine. That's a very true for that test. It is definitely a roadblock. So tell me a bit about your experience of the UCAT.
So I really started studying the UCAT around the summer holidays between year 11 and 12. And that's when I tried to get myself a lot more familiar with it. Of course, I'd heard of it and I had a rough idea of what it was. But during that holiday, I got Medify. I did more practice questions to really just familiarize myself with what it actually entailed, what type of questions there were, what the main challenges were. And so during the summer holiday, that was the main focus. It was just familiarizing myself with the UCAT. But that took a backseat just in term 1. Look at my forest, I can tell you, there wasn't much UCAT done during term 1, and I think that's the case with a lot of people. Speaking to the students here as well, I think the general consensus is that UCAT is going to take a backseat in term 1, and I think it's okay because during the term 1 holidays, it's when I realized I needed to do more work on the UCAT. It's so important, and at the time, my scores were plateauing. I was getting around 2,700 at the time, around that mark using the old scoring system.
Good to clarify,
Yeah.
even though it would be a perfect score.
Yeah. And no, at the time I knew this wasn't going to be enough
Yeah.
to get myself an offer into medicine. And so I was fortunate enough to have a lot of friends doing the Quantum MedPrep UCAT program. And they were kind enough to hook me up with it. They were telling me, oh, this program's really good. This it provides a lot of guidance. And so why not? Why not give it a try? I'll be doing the UCAT hopefully just once, just get it right the first time. And we'll see how it goes. And from there, I think things got a lot better. I had like a clearer vision of what to do. And yeah, the month before the UCAT still was the most stressful time of year 12, but I think Contour helped a lot with that. Yeah.
So as far as joining the Contour program and the difference that you saw there in terms of your UCAT scores that you were getting, and that's really great to see there was improvement. I'm interested in hearing specifically what strategies, what skills you implemented to see that change.
I think what Contour provided me with was direction. Prior to joining with the Contour course, I was stuck in the same mindset where more volume equals more success, and this clearly wasn't the case. I was putting time and energy into just random UCAT questions, and what I felt like doing at the time. Maybe I felt like reading a bit, so I did VR. Maybe I wanted something a bit easier, so I did untimed QR, so that was quite doable. But then it didn't benefit me that much. And so what Contour did was they gave me guidance as to what to do, what I'm actually doing, and why I'm doing it. So why am I doing 8 minutes of VR? Well, it's to improve my timing. It's to improve my strategies. And I think this really helped push me past that plateau that I was stuck on for quite a bit.
And to put it into perspective, going from a plateau of 2,700 to a final score of 3,260 is an unbelievable improvement. And clearly those skills that you're implementing in that guidance that you had made a really, really big difference. On the other side of that, though, looking back and, of course, got an exceptional score, but was there anything in retrospect that you would have changed in regards to your approach?
There were times where I was panicking, I was stressed, and, I think certainly I should have, if I could tell myself something, I would tell them to just calm down, everything will be all right. There are highs and lows. I remember 2 weeks out from my exam, I scored like a 2,400. It was an absolute shocker at the time, and it was like quite like significantly lower than what I was scoring before.
Okay.
And, I tell myself not to just worry, not to worry about it too much, and that, there will be highs and there will be lows, and that everything's gonna be okay.
It's definitely going to take a hit to your confidence, though, if you get that so close to the exam. I'm sure it did. So how did you break out of that moment where you were like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling stressed? What was the approach to managing that stress?
I think taking the time off and just reminding yourself that you're doing the work. Because at the time, my exam was at 6:30 p.m., which is quite late. And so in the month leading up to that exam, I was doing a UCAT exam every single day at the exact same time at 6:30,
Yep.
and doing the exam, reviewing it, and then I'd sleep, wake up, and then UCAT practice, UCAT exam. It's just the whole repetition process, right? And then when I did feel that stress, I did feel that panic, I remind myself I'm doing so much for the UCAT, and reminding myself that I'm doing more than most people and a lot of people, and that gave me a bit of comfort.
You mentioned a few times in this discussion about taking a break and taking that time off, but I've never actually really asked you what it is that you do for your time off. What does a break look like for you?
Specifically in year 12 for me, a break wouldn't be something massive like going to a game of footy or watching the cricket. It'd be something more low key, whether it be going out with my family to have some dinner, seeing my friends outside of school, and formals were definitely like a well deserved break.
Formals plural or
Oh yeah, too fun go, yeah.
awesome.
And so yeah, I think the most common one was just going out with my family and just taking some time to relax and just enjoy the company.
I'm always very interested in asking that question to guests that come on, because I think it's important to sort of explore the fact that we do need breaks, and even high achieving students such as yourself, it is important to take time off and speak to the importance of that self-care as well. So in the end with the UCAT, I mean, an exceptional score and so much great advice you've given there about, reviewing and kind of taking stock of the exams that you're doing as well. It's so great to hear that you're reviewing each exam you're doing and reflecting on that. If you had to boil down your UCAT experience to one piece of advice, what would that be?
It would 100% be consistency. It's not a coincidence that most of the progress that I made was in that month period where I was doing UCAT consistently every day. And I think that's the game with the UCAT. It's not much of a content test, it's a lot of a skills-based test. And when you're just practicing and honing that skill every single day and remaining consistent with it, it's where most of the improvement's going to be made. And so for people who are worrying about their scores early on in the year, I don't think it's too much worry. I'm sure that they're not 100% consistent with it. Maybe they're doing UCAT on one day and then a lot of VC on the next. And that when you are consistent with it, that's where the improvement is made. So my final advice would be to stay consistent.
I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit, because I think consistency can be dangerous in a trap to fall into if you're consistently making the same mistakes. And I want to sort of prod that a little bit and ask, how would you give some advice on consistency that's actually going to help you improve? What else do you need in that consistency to help you get out of a rut, or a sort of, that plateau like you mentioned?
It definitely takes a bit of self-awareness to realize that if you're doing something consistently and nothing's working, maybe you're doing something wrong. And so I think another key aspect would be bringing back to my advice before, getting support. So if you're seeing that you're doing all this work and you're not getting the results you'd like to or you'd hope for, it's important to recognize that. And rather than fall in the cycle, like you said, of just doing something repetitively and not getting any improvement. So I think in order to fix that would be to get some guidance. Perhaps ask a few friends as to maybe what they're doing differently. Maybe asking a tutor maybe asking even some med students, because I know for a fact that I shot a few messages to a few med students asking for their personal advice, and that really helped get me out of like the cycle of the plateauing. And the consistency isn't only with doing the UCAT, it's also with like the work ethic as well. I think if you generally try your hardest and you get the support you need, you're self-aware of any mistakes you might be making or the lack of improvement you're making, I think that's all really important.
And distinguishing the discipline and motivation, I think, is important too, because there are going to be days where UCAT is the last thing you want to do and you might not feel motivated for it. And of course, before you spoke about the importance of seeing the long-term vision, but trying to integrate that with discipline and consistency and showing up every day, even if you don't feel like it. I mean, we've had so many guests on this podcast already speak to the importance of that reflection and that self-awareness like you have done as well. So clearly it's important for doing well at the UCAT. All right. Well, some really good advice there that you've shared with regards to UCAT and integrating that with year 12 and taking stock of the stressful times as well. As we wrap up the end of year 12, you've got that one final component of medicine, which is your MMIs or your interviews, panel interviews, of course, for some universities. So tell me a little bit about your experience of that and how you approached the MMI.
Yeah, so after the UCAT was finished and after ATAR was finished, there's nothing more I'd like to just relax. But then, there's the interviews, and the thing is about interviews, it's not standardized for universities. Different universities have different styles of interviews, like you said, panel, MMI, and so it was a bit of a long haul during the summer. The weather's warming up, all your friends are out having fun, and it was definitely hard in that sense. But again, it was like that last piece of the puzzle that you need to get into medicine. And again, the constant reminder that your future self will thank you for it. Your future self will be so appreciative of the fact that you work hard just this final like month period. And so I think that's what pushed me through a lot as well.
So of the interviews that you did in the end and got offers for, how many interviews did you end up seeing?
Yeah, so I did end up seeing 3 interviews. I sat the first one with Adelaide, the University of Adelaide. The second one was with Monash, and the last one was in person with UNSW.
Okay. And how did your experience, not getting into necessarily too much detail about the interviews themselves, how did your experience differ between each of those?
Between each of those interviews, there was certainly a lot of practice, mainly between Adelaide and Monash, as Monash was my main goal.
Okay.
And I think this practice really helped me improve. I didn't end up getting into Adelaide, but I ended up getting to Monash, which was my main goal. So yeah, I was happy with that. And yeah, so I think just a lot of practice is the final push. Is the final push. You've gone through UCAT, you've finished your exams for your ATAR, and now you've got your MMI, which could make or break your interest into medicine. And so this final push was really important to me, as I did decently on the UCAT, and at the time I was hoping I did decently on the ATAR, as it hadn't been released yet. And so this was the final piece of the puzzle, and I threw all my eggs in that one basket. I was working, like, all my energy was going towards that.
Did you feel like the Adelaide interview, because you said it happened beforehand, did you feel like that was a good test run for you for the Monash interview?
Yeah, 100%. That was definitely the mindset going into the Adelaide interview. I remember I was so nervous. I felt a bit sick on the day. And my parents just kept reminding me, this is just this is a practice run. Imagine this is just another one of those mock interviews that you sat. This is just an opportunity for you to talk. And so I took it like that. And yeah, surely there were like a lot of improvements to be made, but going in with that mindset of just talking, enjoying the time, and just demonstrating to them that you can understand the scenario was really important. And I think that helped me push through the Adelaide interview.
And as you said, obviously you ended up with Monash, which is excellent, very, very exciting. Walk me through what your MMI approach was. How, interviews vastly different from the ATAR and vastly different from the UCAT. And I think there's a lot of carryover with being reflective and consistent and things. But what was your overall approach to doing well at the MMI and interviews in general?
With the MMIs, it was really important for me to not underestimate it, and I always took it extremely seriously, just as serious as the UCAT, just as seriously as my final exams or my ATAR, because after all, it is the exact same.
Certainly in the case of Monash, yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking it's easy. For the UCAT, it's like an aptitude test where you have to actively practice and practice. And so people don't underestimate that. They know how difficult it is. And for the ATAR, again, no matter what subject you're doing, whether it's chemistry, biology, business management, legal studies, you're going to have to actively study that. You're not going to encounter that in everyday encounter. But with the MMI, most of it is with talking and the way you convey yourself. And so a lot of people think it's going to be easy because we all talk every day, right? They think it's going to be a conversation, and it's really important for people to not fall into this trap. And with the MMI, there's a lot of thinking that goes into it: critical thinking, empathy, and even the way you speak, the hand gestures. It's a really serious test, and as such, that's why I took it seriously as the UCAT and the ATAR.
Mm. I think it's great that you spoke to the importance of of the interview being that significant. And I mean, there's a number of students who will have done exceptionally well at the ATAR, exceptionally well at the UCAT, but again, may not have attributed enough attention to the fact that the MMI is just as important and unfortunately will miss out. So I'm always encouraging students, saying it is just as important. It may not be your thing. That the truth is the interview isn't for everyone, and there are going to be strengths academically, and you might struggle with public speaking, you might struggle with that interview setting, but it is important to try and maximize that. So in the spirit of maximizing it, what were your approaches to maximizing your MMI score? What were some skills that you integrated in that?
I mean, piggybacking off the success of the Contour's UCAT program, I mean, they had my immediate trust with the MMI, honestly. So as soon as the MMI program rolled out, I joined up and signed up with it. And so what that entailed was just daily practice. That is, again, the most important thing. Just daily practice. And within these practice sessions, you get feedback from not only your tutor, which was you, for me, for my case,
Yes.
yeah. And yeah, you get advice from the tutor, and you get feedback from other students as well. And so I think this constant, I think you see a pretty common pattern here, like review, feedback,
Yes.
not just for the interview, but for the UCAT as well. And this common pattern stands especially well in the LMI, where this is going to be where you improve the most. When you practice speaking, you practice your critical thinking. When you read the scenario and you speak to someone else and they give you feedback on how you did, I think that's the main component, just keeping it simple and doing the practice and getting feedback.
Mm. Something I always say is we don't have the mental breadth to try and focus on 100 things at once and try and target a specific thing that you're struggling with or wanting to improve on. And then, as I was mentioning to Pranav, sort of having that be your new baseline. And then from there you can build. And even on your worst day, your baseline's still going to be quite strong because you've actually spent the time integrating that skill. And then there's so much other advice that I'm sure you can offer. And I'm just interested to hear, like, if you could sort of boil down your number one tip for the MMI and approaching not just the MMI but medical interviews in general, what would that tip be?
The tip would be to look beyond it as only an interview to get into med school. Look at it as an opportunity. Have this positive outlook with the MMI. As I said before, you're going to be talking every day, no matter what job you're doing, no matter what you're studying. You'll be speaking to people every day, and I think this is such an important skill to be able to communicate your thoughts clearly and coherently. And so, just having this positive outlook, looking at it as an opportunity, I get to practice how I speak. I get to practice, how I deal with different situations, and I think this pushed it beyond just a final hurdle before getting to med school, and rather taking it as an opportunity to improve yourself and get into med school as like a little reward.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit strange, but it can also be a bit of fun as well. And I think when you're talking through some scenarios that you feel really confident with, and maybe you've established a good rapport with interviewers as well, it can be quite interesting to talk through these topics that you've spent so much time learning about and discussing with other people. So having that attitude of enjoyment, I think, is really helpful as well. And coming in with a smile and being happy to be on display and show all of the work you've done and the type of person you are for medicine too.
And it definitely reflects, I'd say, when you're the positive, like, beam of energy. I think that's what you told me for my interview. Just be that positive source of energy within that interview, whether it's online, whether it's in person. Just being that positive person, being friendly, being polite, and showing respect and having manners it goes such a long way.
100%. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that about the MMI and also the other discussion we've had. As we wrap up today, I'm interested to hear what's coming up for you. What are you most looking forward to in the next sort of 6 months? Um,
Yeah, so in the next 6 months, I'll be wrapping up my first semester at med school. So I'm not looking too forward to the exams, but I am looking forward to moving on with the content. I've heard from not only you, but a few other older medical students that the second semester is where all the fun begins, get to look at the anatomy of the human body, and I'm so excited to see that. And as I said at the start, clinical skills make me feel so much like a doctor. Yeah, I feel like this will like encourage those feelings a bit more. And of course, the holidays at the end of the year, I love the summer, and I think just taking some time off, relaxing with friends and family is going to be amazing.
Awesome. It all sounds good. And I can absolutely attest to the fact that in specifically the clinical skills context, Monash does an outstanding job of integrating, the systems reviews and the examinations really nice and early. So as you walk into your case-based learning, you can start, pulling your Dr. House moments out and start thinking of diagnoses and all that. It's really good. So I'm really looking forward to that for you, and I'm looking forward to hearing about how that goes in a few months' time. Just as we finish up as well, I'm interested, we mentioned earlier in the interview about your sort of role as a UCAT live invigilator, and having only been a student and a candidate for medicine 3-4 months ago, well, year 12, 6 months ago, but only getting an offer sort of 3-4 months ago, how do you view your role as now something of a teacher and sort of a role model as well, talking to students who are thinking about medicine and trying to maximize their year 12 as well?
Yeah, so being a UCAT Live mock invigilator is so fulfilling. I remember being in the students' shoes, just like you said, a few months ago, and it's amazing to see med students, honestly. At the time, I thought of them as, like, the ultimate role model, and I looked at them and I'm like, "They're so amazing," you know? Maybe if I get into med school, I'll be like them.
Yeah.
I could be maybe friends with a few of them. And so, yeah, being in that position as a year 12 student, it seemed kind of impossible, and it actually became a driving factor to become a medical student, just 'cause of the role models, I wanna be like them. They're also nice, they're also friendly, they help me so much, and just it drove me to wanna be like them. And so when I did become a medical student, I knew being a live mock invigilator is going to be so fulfilling as well. I get to see them in person, I get to talk to them, I get to hear their experiences, and it's good to remind them that I was in the exact same situation just 12 months ago. And yeah, so it's been amazing working with them, and I'd love to see a few of them, no, all of them in med school, ideally, but
Yes.
but yeah, it would be great to see them in med school.
As someone who, of course, in your case as well, has had the opportunity to contribute a little bit to your med journey and offer some encouragement, it is, yeah, absolutely. I can second that. So fulfilling to see not only the growth you have along the way, but also what a great moment it is when you get an offer and you see that particular student's done all of this work and has eventually got in. So I think, regardless if they do succeed or not, being able to contribute to their journey is so special. So special. One final thing I want to ask you, Jared, is you're obviously a very high achieving individual. You're a med student now, which is so exciting, and I'm looking forward to that for you going forward. If you had to offer one piece of advice as to all of your successes and what makes you tick, what would that be?
I would say do your best, and that means putting all your time and effort into generally bettering yourself and to put all that energy into something productive. And so whether you achieve your goal or not, whether that be your studies, whether that be playing professional sports, whether that be, being a doctor, um, all of that, if you know you did your genuine best, you'll be able to look yourself in the mirror and be proud of yourself regardless of the outcome. In life there, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and it's okay as long as you know you did your best. And along with that, if you're doing your best, you're not going to give up. And so, especially regarding the studies, I think that never giving up is so important. For instance, for the ATAR, chemistry, if you don't understand electrolysis, you can, look at your notes, you can seek some help. For the UCAT, if your timing isn't good, you can do more time practice. You can, again, seek advice from a tutor. And for the interview, you can always practice to improve, but if you give up, none of that's gonna happen. So I believe that generally doing your best and never giving up is the biggest pieces of advice I could provide.
Jared, I've very much enjoyed our time together today, and I'm 100% sure that your advice is going to be beneficial to anyone who is listening, and to me as well. There's lots of good gems that I can take away into my own study and my own life as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the wonderful things that you do going forward.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here.